Red Shellman.
I pinch.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Overlord Iceberg. Yes, Overlord, the anime, not the game. Although there are games, and light novels, and a web novel, and manga, and phone games, and merchandise, and just everything else. Overlord is one of my personal favorite anime series, probably in my top 5. It was created in 2010 by the author Kugune Maruyama, and since then there's been 16 light novels, an anime series with 4 seasons, a manga, a few video games, and even its own movie called The Sacred Kingdom, just released last year in 2024. It's not the biggest series out there, but Overlord has grown quite the following and the fan base in both the East and the West. I personally am a huge fan of the series. Now, to be fair, I haven't read all the light novels, and I know to some of you that's going to be blasphemy, but I've read most. And I love the series. I've done a lot of research on it, and when I looked up Overlord Iceberg, there was only one other, and it wasn't in English. So I figured, why not me? Why, I could do it too. So I'm going to do my best here to give you the best information I can on Overlord. This iceberg comes off of Reddit from Overlord by the user Vendel123. Go check him out on Reddit. He put a lot of hard work into it, and some of the Redditors at the bottom, I kind of cheated a bit. Whenever I couldn't find an answer, I just kind of looked at what they had to say. So I'm going to be mentioning them a lot, so feel free to check out the Overlord, but be warned, because spoilers. For the love of God, spoilers. If you haven't actually done anything besides watch the anime, you're going to be spoiled. There is so much to the series that you're just not going to get if you just watch the anime. And if you go on their Reddit, you're going to be spoiled almost immediately. So I'm telling you to be warned. But if you're like me, you're a super fan that's at least somewhat knowledgeable of the lore outside of the anime, then hopefully I can give you some entertainment here. As always, thanks for watching. I also like to say, if you do like the video, please give me a like and a subscribe. I would really appreciate that. I am a small channel trying to get into the minor leagues. But if you dislike it and you want to unsubscribe, feel free to do that too. But before you do, please let me know why. I'm only trying to get better. Anyway, thanks again, and spoilers! But if you love the series and you're okay with that, let's begin. Well, actually, I'd like to say let's begin, but first, I've added a bonus tier at the top. You see, Overlord is so unbelievably complicated, and when I was halfway through scripting the iceberg, I realized that I was explaining myself over and over again and kind of taking away from the spirit of the iceberg, so I wanted to lay out some basic terms. Think of this as a glossary, if you will, that you can refer back to. If you're familiar with the Overlord lore, if you're a super fan, you could probably skip through this, but I'm going to try to be brief, so let's begin. Starting with names. Yes, names. Very complicated, right? The protagonist of Overlord actually goes by 5 separate names throughout the series. Mostly he's going to be referred to as Ainz, which I'm going to refer to him because it's just easier and quicker. However, there are 5 different names he'll go by, so I don't want you to get confused when I'm using these names. Starting with Satoru Suzuki, which is his original human name when he's in the original human world in the year 2137 of Japan, which is actually a hell on earth dystopia, but we'll get more into that later. Next we have Momonga, which is his name when he's playing the game Yggdrasil, when he's playing as an Overlord. Next, he gets transported or isekai'd to the new world, where he begins to go by the name Ainz Wulgon, which is actually the name of his guild in Yggdrasil. He's using that name in the hopes that anybody that sees it, that he knows, will seek him out. Next, he goes by Momon, or Momon of Darkness, when he's masquerading as a common adventurer or a guild leader. You'll see that somewhat often in the show, but it falls off towards the end of Season 3. Finally, we have the Sorcerer King, which is what he's referred to in towards the end of the season 4 and the end of the light novels that we currently have. So we have a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude, to put it, to use a 20-year-old meme, of course. But yeah, we have Suzuki, Momonga, Ainz or Ainz Ulgon, Momon, and the Sorcerer King, just so you understand. Next, we have worlds. There are 3 worlds in the series, 4 actually if you include some bonus content. The first is Ainz's original world, which I said earlier is set in 2137, which is a dystopian hellscape, but more on that later. Next we have Yggdrasil, which is the game world, in which is the game they're playing. Finally, there is the New World, which majority of the story takes place. The 4th hidden world is Isekai Quartet, which is really just a spin-off series, although supposedly there is some hidden lore in there, but we won't be mentioning that much, if at all, really. Next up, players. So players are pretty self-explanatory. They're players in Yggdrasil that are in the New World. They have incredible power, and they have items and things such as... We'll get into more detail later, but just so you know, a player is someone that comes from the original world with a human soul, but is now in the new world. NPCs. NPCs are non-player characters, duh, but in the universe, NPCs were created by players in Yggdrasil and then followed the players into the new world. The NPCs that we know of that are alive in the current story are mostly just Ainz's NPCs, although there's supposedly there could have been some NPCs in the world before Ainz's arrival, but we haven't seen any other NPCs outside of what is in Nazarick, which leads us to our next entry, Nazarick. So this is simple. Nazarick is the home base of Ainz and his NPCs. It originated in the game world, but is now in the new world. And now there's many floors and secrets to Nazarick. It's basically its own world, really. But we really don't know much about it. And I'm going to say that a lot in this Iceberg. We don't know. But we don't know much about it. Just it's very dangerous. And in the middle sits the throne of Ainz Ulgon. Next one is levels. So this one sounds simple, but it's actually a little complicated. Trust me. So a character's power level in the new world is usually simplified by their level difference. Usually, all you have to know is bigger number better than smaller number. Now, this is how it's quantified. We don't see it in the series, but in the light novel, it goes into a lot more detail. Ainz and most of his NPCs, at least his Floor Guardian NPCs, are all level 100, meaning they have reached maximum strength. Now, when you reach maximum strength, that doesn't mean that you're as strong as you can get, because there are items, strategies, abilities that come into play, and similar to a game like Pokemon of all things, you have some elements that overcome others. So just because a character is 10 levels higher than another doesn't mean they can't be defeated, but it's a hurdle they have to overcome. The reason I bring this up is because I'm going to talk about some power scaling later on, and it's easier for you to remember that the battle maids are all around high level 50s, putting them roughly half the strength of Ainz and his NPC Floor Guardians. So when I say a character is stronger than the battle maids, you'll know that they're like somewhat more than halfway as strong as Ainz. And someone like a character, say Philip, who is just a regular dumbass character in the new world, is going to be like a level 1 or a level 2. So keep that in mind. Next up, we have magic, which you might think is self-explanatory, but there's actually a little bit to talk about here so you don't get confused. In the New World, there was originally 2 forms of magic. The first one, and most common and most powerful still, is wild magic, which is only used by true dragon lords. Wild magic can basically do anything. We don't know that much about it. But we do know that it's countered by world items, which I'll get into in a second. The next form of magic is runecraft, which really doesn't seem to do that much. It's used by dwarves, and by the time of Ainz's arrival, it's kind of a lost art that he attempts to revive. Next, we get into tier magic, which is the most common use of magic after Ainz' arrival. It can be used by humans, demi-humans, and the undead, as well as Ainz uses it. It goes up to 10th tier. Now, we don't know exactly how it scales up to wild magic. Supposedly, wild magic is the superior form, but again, is countered by world items, which I'll get into now. World items. So in Yggdrasil, there exist items known as world items. Yes, there are regular items such as potions, scrolls, things such as. But in Yggdrasil, world level items are just absolutely broken, overpowered. They can do a lot of things. A lot of them are obtained either with a lot of money or in accomplishing certain tasks in Yggdrasil, and only the top level players will have world level items. Now, supposedly these items counter out wild magic, and wild magic counters out world items, so it kind of cancels each other out. We're going to talk about world items a lot later on towards the end of the Iceberg, so I wanted this to be here so you know. Now, this was all like simple stuff if you know the lore, but I wanted to get into it anyway because it just makes it easier for me in the long run. But anyway, let's move on to the actual Iceberg itself by Reddit user Vendel123. Let's begin. First layer of the Iceberg. Number 1, terrible CGI. Yeah, it's true. In the anime, the CGI can be absolutely atrocious at times. Particularly the Death Knights look really out of place, but the worst offender has got to be the Goblin Army, seen in Season 3, Episode 11. But be careful though, because criticizing the Great Goblin Army of the Honorable General Henry is a death sentence, especially when one is within bombardment range of the great goblin magic casters of the Great and Honorable General Henry. Anyway, let's move on. Isekai. This is another setup entry, basically, but this is part of the original Iceberg. You see, Isekai roughly translates to another world. This is a genre of anime that's risen in popularity over the last decade, in which a person in our modern world travels to another world, sometimes by death, like Rimuru in Slime in Another World or Kazuma in Konosuba, sometimes with the help of an outside device such as Naofumi in Shield Hero or Kirito in Sword Art Online, and sometimes just we don't exactly know why, such as Subaru in ReZero, or arguably Satoru Suzuki in Overlord. But we'll get into that later. Essentially, Isekai is popular as a genre because, maybe I'm not qualified to talk about that right now, but it's easier for the reader to get into. It's easier for the author as well, as the protagonists in an isekai start in a new world, and they're like a baby in that world being born, so they have to be explained the systems of the world in detail. So it's just easier and more natural way for the author to dump exposition on the viewer without it seeming unnatural. Anyway, Satoru Suzuki, aka Ainz, the main protagonist, was isekai'd, but more on that later. 41 Supreme Beings. Okay, so by now, can I treat you as if you've watched the show? Ainz is the protagonist, and he's actually a Japanese office worker that just played a ton of Yggdrasil, alright? So in this game, he played alongside other players in a guild. These players formed a guild known as Ainz Ulgon, and they were working together. They were a group of all heteromorphs. The heteromorphs is basically a non-human in this world. Their guild was made up of basically monsters. The 41 Supreme Beings are these players, Ainz included. Some other notable Supreme Beings are Lady Bukubuku Chagama, Lord Peroroncino, and Lord Touch Me. And if those names sound ridiculous, well, it was a video game. Looking at you, Buttskull37. OXT and Mythenroid. So these are the Japanese bands that do the intros and outros of the show. OXT does Season 1, 2, and 4, while Mythroid does the OP for Season 3. These are great, really great. Check them out. They are cool, but it's kind of a side point in the Iceberg, so let's get back to the series itself. Adult lizard scene? Yeah, so there are two characters, anthropomorphic lizard people, that have adult fun in the show, canonically and on screen. Well, you don't see it, but it's a part of the anime. I think this is a joke entry, but you got to admit this would be an odd thing for a lizard to do. I believe this happens in either season 3 or 4 of the second season. Um, there may be something more here, but I don't want that in my search history. Sorry. Ainz is evil. So yeah, bit of a shock, right? Well, for some of you. Ainz is evil. He's an evil character. He's the protagonist that actively harms those in his way. He doesn't do this out of malevolence, usually, but he is known to torture needlessly his enemies. This is an Iceberg entry probably because most people who watch a show like this expect a hero, or an anti-hero, or at least a morally gray character, where Ainz is probably the worst thing that's ever happened to the New World, period. Anyway, don't mistake Ainz for a hero. While he does do some good things, they're usually just insofar as how they benefit him and Nazarick. He does not do these things out of the kindness of his heart. So we know that Ainz is evil, right? But what about Suzuki Satoru? Many times throughout the series, we see that Ainz gets either too worked up, outraged, or flustered, and an outside force appears to calm him down, as if to say, you need to restrain yourself or you're breaking character. We don't know what this is or why it happens, but it's almost as if Ainz isn't allowed to truly be himself. Also, during the events of the end of Season 3, the Kotz Plains Massacre that we'll get into later, we hear his inner thoughts where he states that he realizes he's about to unalive hundreds of thousands of people, yet he doesn't feel anything, and he finds this a little odd. I mean, he's aware, but he can't really do anything about it. Finally, throughout the novels, we hear Ainz's true thoughts and motivations. Many times he says he just wants to go exploring and is kind of tired of being the ruler of Nazarick. He does state that he wants to just hang out with Emperor Jerkneve because he thinks he's just kind of a cool guy. And spoilers for the novel. During the events of Volume 16, when Ainz and the twin elves Mare and Aura infiltrate the Dark Elf village, Ainz tells his NPCs that he's going to gain information on the slain theocracy, but in reality, he just wants some time off, and he wants the elf twins to make some contacts with the elven children and maybe make friends, which they don't give a damn about, by the way. Ainz spends most of his time there just sort of hanging out with the elder potion master, making potions. Now, there's no reason for this, he just sort of hangs out with them. At the end of his all, Suzuki tells himself he had fun, and he wishes he could do things like this more often. But then would later on go on to watch the slain theocracy invade the elf kingdom and slaughter the elves while he just watches and waits for them all to die so he can run in and claim all his stuff. So, Ainz is evil, but is Suzuki? Ainz is a whale. Yeah, obviously. In case you don't know, a whale is a term that refers to top players of online games that spend a lot of money. It's pretty bad. Most online games are free, but funded by a very small select group of players who spend a lot. Think gems of Clash of Clans or diamonds in Azure Lane. Ainz, it's safe to assume, was one of these people. In episode 12 of Season 1, Ainz thinks to himself that an item he's about to use costs his entire Christmas bonus. I have no idea what that means in his world, but it's safe to assume it's a lot of money, considering the item's ability. In an even earlier episode, we see just how far Ainz goes when he's attempting to conceal a message back to Nazarick, his home base essentially. He just throws item after item into it as if it's just, not a big deal to just use up all these items. And finally, in the season finale of Season 1, we see him use an item after item on Shaltir, spoiler, which in his own words were brought from the cash shop, which is basically a term for the place you spend real money in a game. So it's safe to assume that yes, while Ainz has incredible talent and abilities, he bought his way into fame. Buku Buku Chakama's job. So this one's just kind of funny, a meme entry. Buku Buku Chakama is one of the only 3 female characters that were in the guild Ainz Ooal Gown. She was also the creator of Mare and Aura, 2 of the highest ranking NPCs in the guild, the elf twins I mentioned earlier. Buku Buku Chakama's job in the modern world was a voice actor. She actually worked in adult games, hentai games, you catch my drift. So a funny note on this is that Buku Buku Chakama is the older sister of another guild member, Pero Roncino. Pero Roncino is a major degenerate, but more on that later. One day, Pero Roncino and Momonga were having a casual chat in which Shaltir, an NPC created by Pero Roncino, overhears them talking about her being this voice actor. Pero Roncino tells Momonga that he was excited to play this new adult game he got, but in the middle of it he realized it was his sister's voice, which is just ugh. But something no one brings up, totally not related, kind of a hidden side theory, bonus theory if you will. Much more interestingly enough, why does Shaltir remember this? This was before she became sentient, so this is just a mind-blowing rabbit hole to go down. I don't hear enough people talking about it, but anyway, that's just a side theory. And finally, Kugane Maruyama. So this is the creator of the series. So alongside Overlord, Maruyama has written for a couple of other franchises. His short story, Dawn, was adapted in Toya's Type Moon. In addition to that, he was involved with working with Nasu Kinoko, the writer of Fate Stay Night, who is very happy with his work. Also, he wrote under the pseudonym Muchi Muchi Pudding, which is the name he used when he first posted Overlord on the internet. He later changed his pseudonym to Kugane Maruyama when Overlord got published because Pudding just means like jiggly and it's just kind of silly. But hey, Mr. Maruyama, thank you for an amazing series. Second Layer, PKing for Dummies. This is a book written by one of the guild members of Ainz Ooal Gown, one of the players. PKing is a term used in MMORPGs and it stands for player killing. MMORPGs is a type of game that Yggdrasil is. In MMORPGs, the focus is usually more on cooperation, communications, and strategies with your fellow players, with many looking down on killing each other, as it kind of ruins the experience for some. So this book's existence implies that Ainz Ooal Gown, the guild, did a lot of player killing back in the day. We can also imply this by the events of Season 1, Episode 12 and 13, where Ainz has a one-on-one battle with the mind-controlled Shaltir. So Ainz wasn't meant necessarily to go toe-to-toe with other players or enemies. He would have been working together in a group playing more of a support role or a summoning role, right? He wouldn't be someone to go one-on-one with, say, a swordsmaster or something, as he would be weak actually to physical attacks. Individual players in MMORPGs are usually weak when they come up alone against an enemy, so with player-on-player, PKing is something that takes a lot of strategy and an optimized build for necessarily. However, because of Ainz's skill, he's actually more than confident enough to take on the max level Shaltir, level 100, who actually counters him, and even Platinum Dragonlord, but more on that later, alone. This implies that Ainz has a lot of experience fighting other players one-on-one, you get it. Aura's Eye. Okay, I'm sorry, but this is one that I had to cheat on. Sorry, I had no idea what this was referring to. So, both Aura and Mare are heterochromatic, as well as the Elf King and Zeshi Zetsume, more on her later, but I think it goes deeper than this. So, it is about Aura's Eye specifically. Aura's a ranger, meaning that she excels in knowing terrain, vision, that kind of thing. So I think this is her ability to view things while not actually being there, such as in episode 12 of season 1, where she keeps an eye on Shaltir. I'm not sure if that's it, but I tried. Happy Farm. Oh man. So Happy Farm, we are getting into the NPC lore, or the supporting cast of Overlord lore. One of these NPCs is Demiurge, who is a bad dude, or a monster, right? His karma, which is a stat given to NPCs, is set at maximum evil, alongside Albedo, who is another NPC that works in Nazari. This means that Demiurge just enjoys harming people, things, people, and animals for the hell of it. And as such, Demiurge has actually set up a happy farm, which is mentioned, I believe, in Season 2, Episode 3, in which it's stated that he's actually farming demi-humans, Albion sheep to be exact, harvesting their wool and materials for Nazarick. Now, while farming sheep in our world, it's something that's been done forever. It may not sound like a big deal, but these aren't actually sheep. They're technically sentient beings, humanoid type creatures, and Demiurge is both breeding them and skinning them for various research items in Nazarick. Riki. Queen of Clubs. So in the movie The Sacred Kingdom, or in the light novel Volume 12, there's reference to Demiurge, well, the demon playing Demiurge, picking up the princess of the Holy Roble Kingdom and using her as a weapon. Yeah, a club. Later on in the movie, he would use this club against Remedios Custodios, someone who absolutely loves the princess, and the body would actually splatter, like just into a pool of blood on top of her. Absolutely brutal. Pestonia and Nintendo? Yeah, I'm using the name Nintendo as just to be extra cautious. I don't want to accidentally trip an algorithm or something with YouTube. It's happened before with similar names, so forgive me if this sounds ridiculous. So Nintendo and Pestonia are actually very unique NPCs in Nazarick. Both of them have their karma set at very high, if not maxed out, alongside Sebas, who we'll get into later. However, where Sebas would never betray Ainz, these two actually have, and even lived to tell about it. You see, during Demiurge's attack on the Riestes Kingdom in Season 2, he actually captured some humans and brought them back to Nazarick to do God knows what with. However, these two, not wanting to see people tortured senselessly, actually broke them out and tried to save them. And they were caught, however, and punished. Later on, they would be released and asked if they wanted to run an orphanage in the capital city for children whose parents were lost in Ainz's massacre of the kingdom. Also, before the massacre of the kingdom, these two actually asked Sebas for a meeting with Ainz, a secret meeting, as they heard about his plans to, again, massacre the nation. In an attempt to beg Ainz to spare the humans of the nation, well, for Nintendo it was just for the children, Ainz agreed to think about it, which made Sebas happy, who was himself hoping Ainz wouldn't just eradicate humanity, but would never dare to say it. Finally, just a fun fact, Nintendo is oldest of three sisters. Albedo, the main female NPC in the show, as we all know, and is the most evil character alongside Demiurge, and then Rubedo, the mysterious third sister that we haven't heard much about. Interesting. Supposedly Rubedo is like the strongest NPC just in general. Maybe I'm just a dumbass, but I noticed the entry states and Nea Baraha. I don't know how this relates. Nea is a character whose main role is in the new movie in Volume 12. I don't see the connection between these three, so... Anyway, moving on. Zeshi. This is a character from the Slain Theocracy, and there is a lot to her. So her real name is Anteline Heron Foch. Zetsi Zetsume is just her epithet, or nickname, or title, to put it simply. It roughly translates to end of death, end of life. She's half elf and half godkin. She's actually the illegitimate daughter of the Elf King. The Elf Kingdom used to have a neutral relationship with the slain theocracy, but that all changed when the Elf King actually tricked and kidnapped a female Godkin, and he then had his way with her. And later on, that woman gave birth to his daughter, which is Zeshi. Zeshi is incredibly powerful. The light novel states she is level 88, and she actually did manage to land a blow on Mare and injure him. Slightly, but not much more. That all just means that she is incredibly powerful, and she was seen as the ace of the slain theocracy. Like, before Ainz and Nazarick, she probably would have been in the top 5 strongest beings in the world. In one of Maruyama's tweets, he would actually say that Zeshi is stronger than the Battle Maids, who, there's just so many NPCs. It's easy to get confused, but like I said before, I'm going to reference the Battle Maid's power level a lot because it's easier. Anyway, Zeshi is so strong that she is actually bloodthirsty and bored from not being able to find someone she can battle one-on-one fairly. She's actually seen to be someone excited at the idea of fighting the Sorcerer King. Ironically enough, similar to her father, the Elf King. She's obsessed with finding a powerful mate to have even stronger children. And, well, I don't want to spoil much more, but let's just say that she's one of the few natural-born members of the New World that can actually put up a fight against Nazarick. But not so much, however, as the end of the book, she's defeated by Mare. But it seems like she was actually able to do some damage. Godkin. So remember how I just said we would get into Godkin? This is it. Godkin are essentially beings of the New World that are descendants of the 6 great gods or the 8 greed kings. More on that later. Or any of the other players that may have come to the world. Essentially, players who came to the world and had offspring. However, there's a difference to Godkin and awakened Godkin. As mentioned earlier, Zeshi is a Godkin. She's actually an awakened Godkin. Furthermore, the captain of the Black Scripture, which is the elite fighting force that Zeshi is a member of, is also a Godkin. He had a brief encounter with Shaltir, in which Shaltir stated that he is stronger than the Battle Maids. While we don't know for certain, this would put him above level 60 at least, but not as strong as Zeshi. Anyway, these descendants supposedly have insane power, just as the players did. Oh yeah, players. So long as they can awaken to their natural abilities, these Godkin can be quite a force to be reckoned with. Sebas's source of power. So, Sebas is actually a dragonoid. It hasn't come up in the anime, of course, but he has the ability to transform into a dragon. Similar to the Battle Maids, who all have transformations, except for Delta, who's always in her natural form and plays a role in the movie, Sebas is also programmed to be karmically maxed out. This means that he is as good as he can be, being programmed by Lord Touch Me, who was also seen as a very upstanding guy. He is also said to physically resemble the actual human behind Lord Touch Me. Anyway, Sebas isn't a floor guardian, is actually the head butler of the Tomb of Nazarick, but he can command the battle maids in operations. He is level 100 and apparently has the combat ability to go toe-to-toe with both Albedo and Cocytus, who are seen as some of the strongest NPCs in Nazarick. Actually, there are a couple stronger, but we'll get more to that later. Splat page. If you know, you know, but also if you don't know, that's why you're here, right? So if you haven't read the light novel, Volume 9, or was it 8? Volume 9, Ainz, as the Sorcerer King, took on the Riestes Kingdom alongside the Baharuth Empire at the Kotz Plains. As the battle began, Ainz cast a magic spell that killed, well, 80,000 people alone. But this wasn't just an attack. This was a summon. He actually used those dead bodies to summon giant, horrific, Lovecraftian monsters that just trampled the rest of the kingdom's army. And in the light novel, there's an entire page dedicated to the sound of this trampling. Splat, splat, splat. Victim speech. So this doesn't refer to a particular speech, but it's kind of a fun fact. Victim is one of the floor guardians of Nazarick, floor 8, I believe. He's a bizarre looking creature with a halo. Even compared to all the weird looking beings in Overlord, he sticks out as particularly unusual. This is some kind of angel creature, and when it talks, it speaks in its own language, the language of angels. However, seemingly the others of Nazarick can understand it using magic to translate. 13 Heroes. The 13 Heroes are a group of 13 that rose to fame after they banded together to defeat a group of evil, destructive beings known as the Evil Deities 200 years before the events of the story. We don't know much about these evil deities themselves. Most fan theories suggest that they were NPCs serving the 8 Greed Kings, who were among the second group of players that arrived to the New World after the 6 Great Gods. More on those later. Now, supposedly one of them that we know about was an insect king, insect demon, something like that. But we don't know much about the rest of the group of deities. And we don't know much about the 13 heroes actually either. The ones we do know about are Platinum Dragonlord, Regret, Evil Eye, the leader and his companion, who were both strongly suggested to be players, and oddly enough, one of those players would end up becoming the leader even though he started out being the weakest, even by New World standards. But by fighting and leveling up, the weaker player became the strongest and became the leader. But leading the Platinum Dragonlord, so he must have been pretty strong. More on Platinum Dragonlord later, by the way. Anyway, this was 200 years ago, and we don't know about the other members, who are all probably deceased by now. The other 2 players we know are gone. The leader supposedly killed the other player. We don't know why, but after this, apparently Platinum Dragonlord actually killed the leader, possibly seeing a chance to strike after he was wounded. You see, Platinum Dragonlord knows about players and is actively cautious around them. We see this in Volume 14 of the light novel at the end of Season 4. Evil Eye is still around and is a member of Blue Roses, the adventurer group. Evil Eye outclasses the rest of her adventurer group, though I don't think if they really know how powerful she is. Evil Eye is said to be around level 50, making her just about on par with the lower level battle maids. And if I mention that a lot, again, it's because when power scaling the characters, battle maids, it's just easier, you get it. Anyway, do remember that Evil Eye was able to defeat Entoma, one of the battle maids, using the same spell that she used on the Insect King, Vermin Bane. Well, this is a theory, at least, really. Anyway, it's possible that we will see the 13 heroes rally again at some point, the surviving members at least, to try to take on Ainz and Nazarick. We'll see. Philip Kaka? So, I'm sorry, I don't understand the Kaka. Is this supposed to be a joke or a meme? Every time I search, it comes back to Reddit. Hi Reddit, I'm really trying here. Anyway, so Philip is a character in Overlord that's kind of a meme at this point. He was a noble, a third in line for power. He came into power when the Riestes Kingdom lost a whole bunch of troops at the Kotzi's Plains, right? See above, splat page. Anyway, he was such an idiot and a loser that the Sorcerer Kingdom decided to use him in a political plot. They were manipulating him basically to gain control over the Riestes Kingdom food supply. And using capitalism is complicated, that's not important. However, Philip took this a step further and actually he stole from the Sorcerer Kingdom when they were attempting to supply the Roble Holy Kingdom, which was also the Sorcerer Kingdom's fault, but I digress. This was seen as the dumbest move possible by literally everyone in the series and watching outside of the series. And of course, This was the just cause that Ainz used to invade and take over the country. Of course, the Riestes kingdom tried to negotiate with Ainz, with the king even offering his own head as tribute. However, at this point, Ainz and Nazarick just wanted to go ahead and invade, so they did. And they refused to accept surrender, and almost everyone in the kingdom, from man to woman to child to infants, were slaughtered by Nazarick in just a few days. All because of one man, Philip, who decided he was too big for his own britches, to put it colloquially. Philip was later captured by Albedo, and then used as a test for various torture methods for presumably all of time to be tortured, essayed, you name it. So yeah, he's probably dead or, still suffering to this day. You really never know with Nazarick. Ainz is justice. So this might be kind of a meme entry again. In the Overlord movie and the light novel 12, the character Nea constantly refers to Ainz as justice. I mean, ad nauseum. Way too much. This girl grows to see Ainz as a god, which of course was his plan. However, let's think outside the box here. Ainz being justice, could there be more to it? Kind of the same way that Light from Death Note claims he's justice. I mean, you see, by his actions, he's actually making the world somewhat of a better place, even though it's not his intention, really. The Riestes kingdom was already out the door before Ainz shows up. There was massive political problems, corruption, a drug trade, and Ainz sets that right by slaughtering them. The dwarves were under attack and threat of extinction thanks to the Quagoa in Season 4, and Ainz has Shaltir slaughter the Quagoa by the thousands. The lizard men had 5 tribes that were all kind of on shaky ground. I believe 2 of them were hostile to the other 3. And they were on the brink of starvation, and Ainz comes in and slaughters a whole bunch of them. And they become united because of it. The ice dragons that were causing problems for the dwarves and others, and Ainz killed the king of them and put the rest under its control. The Holy Robo Kingdom, where the movie takes place and Nea is from, were under constant assault by the Beastmen tribes, and while the Holy Kingdom was able to hold them back, Ainz had Demiurge unite the Beastmen under the threat of, Demiurge, and actually united them into an assault on the Holy Robo Kingdom, which was the most successful assault yet. Many of the people of the Robo Kingdom were slaughtered, again, possibly tortured and essayed for all of time, but now the survivors no longer have to worry about the Beastmen, and I could go on. Basically, while Ainz is a force of evil, at the end of the day, he is setting things right, though this is the most likely an unintended side effect. Layer 3. 8th floor hierarchy. So the 8th floor of the Tomb of Nazarick is shrouded in mystery. They are supposedly the strongest fighting force in Nazarick, and it is said that, should any force manage to get past the 8th floor, that Ainz and his guild would be doomed. We don't know exactly what is on the 8th floor, but what we do know is that the strongest member of the Battle Maids is there, Omega, who is supposed to be even stronger than Sebas, but we know nothing about her. And then there's also Rubedo, who is Nintendo and Albedo's younger sister. Rubedo is supposedly the strongest member of the guild, period. As in, even stronger than Ainz himself, but more on that later. Finally, the leader of the 8th floor is a little guy who we mentioned earlier, Victim. So what does it say about Victim's power level if he's in charge of the strongest NPC in Nazarick? Dungeon Master. So I have no idea. This could be a reference to Ainz being a master of a dungeon like in Dungeons and Dragons, but that sounds kind of lame. I think this might be referring to Neuronist, who is the head torturer of Nazarick, and she does some freaky nonsense, but other than that, I have no idea. Sorry. the top 5 worst. This refers to the NPCs in Nazarick that are the top 5 worst jobs in Nazarick, top 5 worst titles, top 5 worst personalities. I'm not really sure. No one's really sure. This is a group that includes Neuronist, who I just talked about having the worst occupation, Kohyukyo, who is a cockroach monster and has the worst residence, Gash Hoku Koshu, who is supposed to be the worst appearing, I can only imagine, Chokmul, who is labeled as having the worst personality, and the 5th member we don't even know the name of, but I'm sorry, I'm cheating, but is supposed to be the worst arrow. Oh boy. Ani News. This is just a YouTube channel that talks about Overlord content sometimes. Neat? I've seen some of their videos and they seem okay. I don't know what the big deal is, if there's some kind of controversy there. Number 18. Shargak Shakasas. I'm sorry, I butchered that name, but I tried. It's another YouTuber that talks about Overlord content. What makes him unique is that he's just putting out content constantly. Like, damn. But, I mean, hey, never stop the grind, I guess. Check him out. Bonus entry, I'm also going to add in Zeronic Kiba. He talks about Overlord content as well, and seems like a cool guy. You should follow him. I like him a lot. The Vampire Princess of the Lost Country. This is a bonus novel of Overlord written by Maruyama himself. Yes, a side story. If you have read some of the What If novels of ReZero, it's kind of like that. Anyway, what's interesting about this is originally, if you wanted to buy it, you couldn't. You actually had to buy all 3 Japanese Blu-ray disc bundles in order to buy this. Okay, so maybe this is part of the greed ReZero What Ifs. All kidding aside, these Blu-ray boxes had vouchers in them with codes. If you had the codes from the first 2, you can then use the voucher in the 3rd box to order it. Anyway, it would be boring if I just read you the plot of it. Essentially, it takes place in a world 200 years before the events of the main story, so around the time of the 13 heroes and the evil deities. This time, Ainz is transported alone to a new world, though still super powerful. He then meets up with a young girl who is undead, I think. It's more of a wholesome story than our Overlord. I think this is to imply that what would Ainz or Suzuki Satoru be without the influence of Nazarick and NPCs? Sounds like he could have been a swell guy. I mean, I kind of doubt it though. Ainz's Orb. So when you look at Ainz himself, you'll constantly notice a glowing orb under his ribcage. You might think this is a design choice or part of his outfit or body, but it's actually separate. It's a world item. So despite the fact that we see it all the time, we still really don't know much about it. What it's called or what it does. Supposedly it has multiple uses, but we don't know. Alright, I'm just going to say it outright. We don't know. It's supposed to be strong against dragons. That's all I could find. What we do know is that it's obviously important enough that Ainz has it on him at all times. If you see Ainz without the orb, that's not Ainz. A lot of characters in the light novel and the anime have aimed for that red orb, thinking it's an obvious weak spot, but apparently it can't be broken or even scratched. So what it does is still a mystery. Gap Moe. So, Gap Moe is an anime term. It refers to characters not acting in line with their usual personality, to boil it down. I think this is referring to a non-canon official spin-off comic known as Comic a la Carte. That was a lot of words. Chapter 33 of this comic, or manga, or novel, or whatever, has Aura and Shaltir dressed differently for a while. I'm not sure about this one. Did I miss something? Let me know down below, but please be nice. 6 great gods. Okay, here we go. Buckle in. So the 6 great gods were the first players ever recorded to come to the New World from Yggdrasil. Originally, they were from Earth, like Satoru Suzuki. You get it. These 6 players would go on to form the Slain Theocracy and be regarded as gods by the humans of their time. This all takes place 600 years before Ainz arrives? Yeah, by the way, time works differently in this world for players than the real world. We'll dive into more of that later. Anyway, the 6 great gods we don't know much about. We do know a lot about one of them though, Surshana, who was an undead overlord that we can confirm was level 100. Because he was undead, he was able to live longer than his 5 other companions, but was ultimately killed by the 8 Greed Kings, but more on them later also. Anyway, the 6 great gods were seen as gods due to their immense power and their treatment of humans. Yeah, so it's said that if not for the players coming to the New World, humanity would have gone extinct. Most beings in the New World see humans as either livestock or a food source. The New World is filled with all forms of dragons, demi-humans, beastmen, and even genies? Yeah, that's a thing that was mentioned and will never be mentioned again, probably. Anyway, I'm tickled because there's just so much. Overlord is so great. Anyway, the 6 great gods paved the way for humans to have a fighting chance, and they were later worshipped as the gods of fire, water, earth, wind, life, and death. Surshana taking on that last role. Fun fact though, while most of the world knows of the 6 great gods, most nations only worship the first 4. I'm guessing that worshipping a god of death isn't a pleasant thing to say. Anyway, to wrap this up, the 6 great gods were seen as a positive force in the world, even to the current day. They prevented human extinction, but it also seems like they were just players who enjoyed being in a new world. Eventually, however, 5 of the 6 great gods would die off due to natural causes, but not before having some offspring, some children, as that's where we get Godkin from. Surshana, being immortal, was left alone, but he wouldn't be the last player in the world as a new group would arrive 100 years later. The 8 Greed Kings. So the 8 Greed Kings were the second group of players to enter the New World. There were 7 male and 1 female. We don't know much about them, surprise, surprise, but we do know that they were seen as evil. They even came with their own home base, similar to Ainz with Nazarick. It's called Uriuenshu, and it still exists to this day. It's a floating city that the Platinum Dragon Lord currently lives in. So to get into some of their history, when they arrived and they realized they had immense power, they immediately abused that power. Again, the humans of the world were in big trouble and having a hard time fighting other races, but the Greed King supposedly pushed the other races back. But not really to help the humans, just more so out of greed. Supposedly, a theory is that they are the group of players that used a world item that introduced a magic system into the world, tier magic. This allowed humans to actually fight back more efficiently, as at one point only the Dragon Lords and the Dwarves had any relation to magic. The Dragon Lords, seeing that the 8 Greed Kings were tearing the world apart, decided they had to intervene and went to war with the Greed Kings. First, they cut a deal with Surshana to defeat them, but he failed as he was outnumbered, and the last remaining member of the 6 great gods was killed. Later on, it is said that most of the Dragon Lords died as a result of this, leading to their near extinction. They were just that powerful. It is said that when one of the 8 kings would die, they would just revive one another, although this did weaken them in the process. With the Dragon Lords defeated and the only ones left alive were the ones that weren't in the battle, the world was under the command of these 8 wicked players. The Dragon Lord ceded the fight and the world to them, and the Greed Kings were the dominant force, making humans and everyone else bow. Well, until we don't exactly know how long, but the 8 Greed Kings all died out pretty prematurely due to infighting. Sounds like a bit of missing context there, right? But again, a lot of the lore exists solely in the mind of Maruyama. We may never know, but the 8 Greed Kings are not around anymore, and supposedly they were defeated by their own greed. Dystopian society. Ooh, this is a good one. This refers to Suzuki Satoru's real world. Remember, Suzuki is Ain's original name. He has the soul of a human. Now, Suzuki is from Earth, but in the year 2138. In this world, corporations have taken absolute control over the world, rendering the governments of the world powerless. Smog and pollution fills the streets, and Suzuki actually claims to have witnessed people die due to walking around with gas masks. Smog and pollution fills the streets, and Suzuki actually claims to have witnessed people die due to walking around without gas masks. Some people straight up just have artificial lungs. There is almost no nature left. A lot of cities are domes. This is all just hell, right? Oddly enough, most people just seem to make it day to day like nothing's wrong. They've just gotten used to it. Everyone just works, comes home, and tries to escape into virtual reality. And of course, try not to suffocate when walking home. They enjoy jumping into video games, like I said earlier, because there's actually nature in the game, unlike the real world where none exists. So when you understand that, maybe it's easier to understand players in the new world, as in people who come to the new world. For them, a world full of dangerous monsters and dragons must be like paradise compared to where they came from. Anyway, it doesn't look like Ainz is going back, so that's one thing, but yeah, the world of Overlord, the real world, is hell on earth. Huh, touch me if you can. One of the 41 members of Ainz Ulgon, Lord Touch Me, was the creator of Sebas and was an insectoid heteromorph. Touch Me If You Can is supposed to be his full name, basically just implying that you couldn't harm him. Even Ainz could never beat him back in the Yggdrasil days. He was also one of the founding members of the guild, but more on that later. Albedo betrayed Ainz. So as I said before, the NPCs now have a mind of their own, and can act on their own and make decisions without being told to. Albedo is the NPC most attracted to Ainz, and is absolutely obsessed with him. However, in the light novels and anime, there are several references to Albedo possibly planning something behind his back. While I personally don't think this is some plot against Ainz, I think this is more doing things for his own good that he doesn't need to know about. It still shows that the NPCs are willing to act on their own, even against Ainz's wishes. Layer 4. Escape from Nazarick. This is a game, I've been playing it in the background actually. Surprise! Well, it's available on Steam, and I guess it's officially made by Katakawa. It's kind of a Metroidvania style game, if that makes sense. So I do not know if it's canon or not yet. It stars Clementine. Clementine, after the events of the 3rd volume, I think, is an absolute monster. Just killing to be killing. But of course, she meets Ainz, and Ainz just crushes her to death with his bare hands. What's interesting about this is that after this happens, well, Ainz does this thing of just taking all her stuff and then just running away, like some people I know. But he left the body there, where it would later be recovered by the kingdom's forces. However, later on, it's mentioned at the end of the volume that her body actually went missing. This was never brought up again, but in this game, you play as Clementine searching for a way out of Nazarick, and this happens after she is supposedly killed. So is this possible that this game is a continuation of that particular story element? I don't know, but play it for yourself. It's not that bad, really. Mass for the Dead. Okay, so this one just blows my mind. What the? I never heard of this, and it's already gone for Americans. This was a mobile game developed by Exis Inc. and released in Japan on February 21st, 2019. And the global version was released in April 2020, or April 20th, 2020. Kind of got tongue-tied there, forgive me. But it was shut down less than a year later. And, I mean, the game looks awesome. Everybody apparently loved it. You get crossovers with other isekai animes like Konosuba. But more importantly, it looks like we just have an abundance of waifus. Every female character in the game has some swimsuit outfit, even Zeshi and Clementine. Apparently this game was so popular that they shut it down every time. Supposedly this game even had some exclusive lore in it, as well as was just very well liked by Western Overlord fans. What a shame. Yeah. If you speak Japanese, you can still download it on a Japanese Google account, so better study up. Like I'm doing. Check out the second channel, please. Longinus. Supposedly, this is the most powerful world item that exists, or one of them at least. This item has the power to delete anything it's aimed at, and can be used by anyone. But there's a catch. If you use this item, the user would also be deleted. Deleted as in, can no longer be brought back to life. Unless you use another world item, of course. I'm not sure if Ainz has it, or if it's in the current story, or will ever come up in the current story or not. I think one of the guild members mentioned having it. I don't remember. But if it exists in the world, any random person that can figure out how to use it could theoretically just point it at Ainz and put him down for good. I doubt that would ever happen, but we'll see. Volume 17. Volume 17 is going to be the second to last volume released by Maruyama, as he has stated that he has plans to end it after Volume 18. Which just seems too soon, man. So we still don't know when it'll be coming out, at least at the time of me making this video. But at the end of Volume 16, we get quite a different cliffhanger. Spoilers, again, this time big spoilers, seriously, read the damn book. But at the end of 16, Zeshi is defeated, as I mentioned earlier, and captured by Mare and taken back to Nazarick. Now, she's actually so powerful that they can't use their usual torture methods. I'm not sure how they did it, but they managed to get into her memories, and whatever Ainz saw in those memories made him react in quite an unusual way. You see, Ainz called to Obedo immediately after and told her that, stop what you're doing, we're going to invade the slain theocracy now. Of course, this is where Zeshi is from, and Ainz is usually very cautious and does not just go ahead and invade without some kind of plan. But in this situation, it seems he does not want to wait. So just what did he see in her memories that made him want to act so quickly? Well, we're going to find out. Eventually. Previous players. So far we know of Ainz, the 6 great gods, the 8 greed kings, and the 2 other players that were a member of the 13 heroes. But there are a couple others that are hinted at that appeared in the story. Now, we don't know definitively if Ainz is going to be the last hero to come to the world. We've never been told that. But there was a couple other players that are recorded, one of which arrived alone and was actually almost immediately ambushed by Deep Darkness Dragon Lord. Yeah, that's another Dragon Lord we just haven't talked about yet, and we know nothing about. This player supposedly had a world item, but Deep Darkness Dragon Lord was able to defeat him, so he must not have been a very strong player. That or he really didn't know what he was doing. And then we have another person who was implied to be a player. This was a Minotaur, and he lived in the Minotaur Nation. Yeah, that's another thing that's in the world that we're never going to hear of, probably. I've said it before, but this series is just great. Thank you, Maruyama. Just much love, much love. This person was a Minotaur, and he was said to have been a very unusual Minotaur. He spoke to them about surgery and refrigeration, and he had these ideas, but he couldn't replicate them in the medieval world without technology because, well, there wasn't really the materials, and I mean, he probably had hooves for hands or something. But because of his ideas, he actually was named the Minotaur Sage. Now, he would eventually die, leaving behind his weapons and gear, which the other Minotaurs used to defend themselves from the encroaching Beastmen. Yeah, see, Beastmen don't like anybody, really. Furthermore, apparently, he raised the status of humans to Minotaurs. So at one point, humans were just livestock to Minotaurs, but I guess they're just better off now. This is all very odd things for just a regular Minotaur to do. So it's pretty heavily implied. And then we finally get to Ainz, who, as we know of, is the only player alive in the world currently. It's never been stated, though, again, that he's the last. You see, the New World's time operates differently than the real world, so it's possible that all of the players that we've talked about got sent to the world at the same time, but landed in different times. Ainz just so happens to be at the tail end of that we know of. So it's possible that we will yet see another player enter the arena, but only time will tell. Corrupted World Champion. So from everything I'm seeing, this refers to the web novel. Let me be clear, the web novel was made before the light novel, made by Maruyama of course, and posted online. Now the web novel, everything in it, is not canon to our current story. So honestly, I don't really want to talk about it much. Corrupted World Champion refers to a world champion in the web novel. He basically won a fighting tournament and gained the world champion class with all the perks and benefits, but was then corrupted and became a world enemy. I just don't know much more about this. There's a deep dive to it, but it's not really canon of the story, so I kind of just want to move on. Catastrophe Dragon Lord. This is a Dragon Lord that is supposedly dead and has been predicted by the slain Theocracy to be revived and returned to the New World. Again, we don't know much about it, but apparently it can be subjugated by a world item, which implies that it isn't a true Dragon Lord, or, maybe the slain Theocracy just doesn't know that. The distinction between a Dragon Lord and a true Dragon Lord is simply the ability to use wild magic, as the use of wild magic is going extinct in the New World. Remember, Ainz was able to kill the Ice Dragon Lord with just one spell, because this Dragon Lord while he was strong in the New World, he was actually pretty weak compared to other Dragon Lords, and dragons in general, apparently. But also that he wasn't a true Dragon Lord. Anyway, Catastrophe Dragon Lord was predicted to be revived somewhere in the kingdom. Way back in Season 1 of the anime, the Black Scripture, which is the elite fighting force of the slain Theocracy that Zeshi is a part of, although she wasn't present for this, they were in the kingdom searching for this Catastrophe Dragon Lord. They planned to mind control it and bring it to their side using their world item, Downfall of Castle and Country. However, at the same time they were there, Shaltir was in that same area hunting down Brain Unglaus. However, Shaltir was distracted when she realized that the captain of the Black Scripture, who is an awakened Godkin, was incredibly powerful and was an actual threat. As she states, he was stronger than the battle maids. They had a little clash, and thinking quickly, they decided to use this world item to subjugate her instead. This only half worked, as just before the mind control could be fully in effect, Shaltir managed to kill Lady Kyrie, the person who was using the world item. Well, she mortally wounded her, and then she later died of her wounds. This forced the Black Scripture to retreat, as they were almost entirely wiped out, and the world item was used up. But Shaltir was not fully controlled. So while she was no longer a threat, she also was not fully under anyone's control either. But I'm getting sidetracked. The point is that Catastrophe Dragonlord is supposedly really strong, but again, it wouldn't be a true Dragonlord, so it wouldn't be a threat to Ainz. Not likely, at least. Now, as to being revived? Well, we haven't seen it, we haven't heard about it since. The prophecy, I guess, didn't come true, so if it'll return or appear at all is unlikely. Suzuki Satoru is dead. Yeah, more than likely. You see, at the end of the 16th volume, Ainz and the residents of Nazarick have been in the New World for years at this point. By now we all know that time works differently in the New World than Yggdrasil. But keep in mind, we don't know anything about the state of Satoru's actual body. In Sword Art Online, when Kirito puts on his nerve gear and is trapped in the game world, his body has to be constantly attended to. And if he's unplugged, his character would just fall over dead in the game world. This entry actually is kind of a meme entry when you think about it. Now that I'm thinking about it, most icebergs have a "he was dead the whole time" theory, or "he was in a coma the whole time." But this actually has some weight to it. As I've said way back in the beginning of this iceberg, we actually don't know how the players were transported to the New World. It's possible that Satoru's character and mind were brought over, or copied, and his body has long since expired. We also know that Satoru lives alone, both of his parents being deceased, and the New World is a dystopia. So if he's just laying there in that chair for years, it's not like anyone came to check in on him. But then again, time works in mysterious ways in that world, so maybe he's really just passed out for a couple of seconds. We don't know. And more than likely, we'll never know. But this is one of the more plausible "the main character is dead" theories out there, at least in my opinion. Arche's sister's fate. This one. So in case you didn't know, Arche was one of the 4 adventurers that infiltrated Nazarick, as well as with the Empire's forces at the Empire's command. Arche is actually a pretty strong and accomplished magic student, being one of Fluter's top 20. Fluter being that goofy looking magic guy who's one of the top magic users in the world, before Ainz at least. Anyway, she doesn't make it out alive. In fact, she is specifically ordered by Ainz to Shaltir to kill her painlessly, which to him is a mercy. Now, Arche actually comes from a family of disgraced nobles that is in a lot of debt. And Arche, despite the fact that she was a decorated magic user, was adventuring as a way to pay off her family's debt. Unfortunately, as we know, Arche would not make it back home. And Arche had 2 sisters. I believe they were twins, and they were underage. As a way to pay off this debt, they were both sold into slavery after Arche didn't make it home and stopped sending money home, and apparently died due to overwork. What this means can be pretty dark. I believe it's implied that they were a certain kind of slave. Yeah, well, this is dark as hell. Another example of Ainz's influence on the world, as this all resulted in just his presence alone. Just sad, truly sad. Pero Roncino doesn't qualify. Another sort of meme entry. Pero Roncino is a huge pervert and degenerate, according to all the sources. We know that he likes his hentai games, but what's even more telling is his creation of Shaltir. Shaltir has the appearance of a young girl and is just an absolutely perverted freak. This is more expanded upon in the web novel, but even in the canon sources, we see how she gets around Ainz. Ainz himself laments just how freaky she is when he goes to punish her, and she likes it and sees it as a reward. Just disgusting. So I can go on, but basically Peroroncino would be at odds with Lord Touchme, who is seen to be the most honorable of the 41 supreme beings, and would therefore technically not qualified to be a part of his guild. I'm not sure if this is a plot hole or if they just didn't know. I don't know. I'm going to try real hard with this name. Saindorius Vicyon. So I don't know why this is so far down the list. This is just the name of Platinum Dragon Lord, which is a much more badass name, by the way. Kind of like Admiral Wolverine Thunderbolt or something like that. Platinum Dragon Lord is the son of the Dragon Emperor, which we know is responsible for players being in the New World in the first place. I believe personally that PDL sees players as a threat and his responsibility to save the world from, as his father is responsible for the issue. Well, PDL, or Platinum Dragon Lord, is probably Ainz' biggest threat, but given the fact that Ainz possesses so many world items, it's unlikely. But still, if he can rally with others in the New World, such as the Slain Theocracy, who hate him actually, and possibly other New Worlders such as Evil Eye, I suppose it's possible to maybe injure some of the NPCs? I don't know. Anyway, Layer 5, bottom of the iceberg, final tier. Ariel Omega Caloric Stone. So that was a lot of words. Ariel Omega, as I've said before, is supposedly the strongest battle maid on par with Sebas. But, again, we don't know much about her. At all. And there's just so much to this world. Anyway, the Caloric Stone is supposedly a world item that can make NPCs stronger than they naturally should be. As such, it's theorized to be possessed by Omega, which is why she is so strong. But we don't know anything about her. All we know is that she resides on the 8th floor and she is super strong. But will we ever even see her? And we don't know. The rest of the battle maids are all currently in disguise, again except for Delta. So what's Omega's disguise? We may never know. Arshay Spared. Remember Arshay, the lovely entry we talked about just a little while earlier? Well, in this entry, it's about the fact that in the web novel, again, not canon to the current series, she's actually spared, but only to be used by Shaltir as her forever SA slave. Ugh, fuck man, this poor girl. Anyway, apparently she also teaches Ainz how to dance? I mean, that's kind of random. But I guess it all works out in the end, as she's given the privilege to move her sisters into Nazarick and live in peace. Which, sometimes, I don't know what side of those walls are safer. Tuare Nina's baby. Yeah, we're into some dark ones here, I apologize. In case you don't remember, Tuare is the woman that Sebas found lying in the street, used up and near death. As Sebas passes by, Tuare begs Sebas for help, and Sebas, being highly karmically ranked, helps her, to Solution's dismay. He asks Solution for help in treating her, which, hey, really dark stuff now, I'm telling you. Tuare is being used as a prostitute, and has several internal injuries as a result of it. You know, relating to certain organs. Well, apparently she also has a fetus that is removed. Well, what happens to that fetus? We never see Tuare Nina later being pregnant or with the baby, so we never hear about it again. And Solution is a slime monster that hates humans and loves to dissolve them, so yeah, pleasant thoughts. That's a joke, obviously, that's horrible. Bell River Murder. Sounds like a dollar store crime novel, doesn't it? So Bell River is the name of one of the 41 supreme beings and one of the original 9 that formed it. Apparently he was praised for his intellect and sheer strength in the game. Outside of the game, however, apparently, according to the novels, he had uncovered some ominous information about the mega corporations, and while trying to get some of this information out there, he was killed to be silenced. We don't know anything else. Sorry to keep saying that, but we don't know what this is, or nor will we ever, probably. But Bell River is the only member of the 41 Supreme Beings that is confirmed deceased. So that's interesting. Ainz wasn't isekai, but his items were. Yeah, I've hinted at this earlier, but supposedly the Dragon Emperor wasn't trying to summon players, he was trying to summon items. The players and the NPCs nearby just happened to get dragged in along with them. So it's likely that Satoru wasn't isekai, but his mind was? There really isn't much more I could say about this, it's just a plausible theory. Unless I missed something, in that case help me out. RPG Maker game. So we've been over a few Overlord games, but this one is unique. It's a knockoff. I don't think Katakawa gave their blessing on it, but it's a game on Steam that claims to be a sequel to Overlord, whatever that means. And it looks like it has nothing to do with Overlord, and it's made by Gotcha Games? Huh. Sometimes a snake tells you it's a snake, and if you get bitten, you're the only one to blame. Anyway. Nine's Own Goal. So this should be higher up in the Iceberg, I believe, but Nine's Own Goal was a precursor to Eins Ulgon. Get it? Nine's Own Goal. Eins Goal. I even said that wrong. I got tongue-tied. I apologize. The guild had 41 supreme beings, of course, in the end, but originally this was founded in Yggdrasil when non-human players were being hunted down exclusively. These 9 players would band together and stand up to those hunting them down. This included Momonga and Lord Touchme, as well as 7 others. They would add the other members later on, and eventually change the name Eins Ulgon. So just some lore here, not really anything dark, thankfully. User, the Snake King. So this is just a user on the R Overlord subreddit, but they alone are responsible for hundreds of Overlord memes. Keep working hard, buddy. Apparently you are beloved. New Worlders aren't human. So I think this is referring to the fact that in the New World, humans are far from the dominant species. In fact, it is said that they would be extinct today or just exist as livestock were it not for the 6 great gods and the 8 greed kings. You have all kinds of races. Lizard men, beast men, scorpion people, yeah, that's a thing. Centaurs, goblins, dragons, elves, orcs, and genies. So yeah, they all outclass humans. Other than that, all I can think of is that New Worlders are similar to humans in the real world, but are different, that they can level up and learn tier magic. I'm sorry, I don't know much more than that. Light's Downfall and God Rising Cult of Ainz. So these two are pretty similar, so I'm just going to go ahead and combine the two. They're both pretty popular fan fictions in the fandom of Overlord. Light's Downfall happens at the end of Volume 10, and God Rising Cult of Ainz follows Nea after the events of the movie/Volume 12. Check them out. And finally, the final entry, Neko Clementine. So, at the end of this iceberg, with all this depth and obscurity and horrible entries, the final entry is Neko Clementine. Amazing. So, the official Overlord artist and illustrator Sobin, who is amazing by the way, loves to draw Clementine as a cat girl. Yeah, that's it. Well, we love his work here, so more power to ya. I even saw a figurine available of her, so check it out. And so we are done, and that was a hard one. I'm not exaggerating. I finished the last volume, watched the movie, and started playing this game all in preparation for this iceberg. I love the Overlord series, and I hope you love it too. And if not, check it out. I mean, if not, why did you watch this iceberg? But I digress. Thank you so much for watching. even if I spoiled everything for you here, and I certainly hope I didn't, I hope you'll continue to support the show. This isn't even close to being everything hidden in Overlord. You can buy the volumes on Amazon translated, and the movie should be widely available to watch soon. I highly recommend it. But thank you, Maruyama, for such an amazing series. I love it, and I hope you love it too. And thank you all for watching. As far as housekeeping goes, if you liked the video, please give me a like and or subscribe. And if you didn't like it, feel free to dislike or unsubscribe. But just let me know why first. And if I got anything wrong, please let me know why in the comments below as well. I only want to get better. And finally, if you're missing my Learning Japanese series, check out the second channel. It'll be linked down below. Hopefully I remember to do that. And yeah, I certainly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you'll come back for the next video. Take care.